Good morning.
Good morning. Just waiting for others to join and we'll get started shortly.
Christine, I'll be back in just 1 second, 1 minute.
Okay.
Christina.
Yes, hi.
Hi, good morning. Where
Good
am I on the agenda?
So we're going to do a quick review of contracts that have already been vetted, and then you are next. And just so you know, we do stream these meetings live on YouTube, so they are streaming now.
Great, thank you.
Problem. And if anyone is streaming live, just give us 1 second while our finance chairperson returns to the meeting, and as we wait for other board members to join. Mr. Walker, I'm just going to check with other board members. Ms. Oliver's calling in shortly. She just texted me that she has some computer problems.
Testing. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Christina, it's a little spotty over here. So if I freeze or I'll just log back on. I'm out of school.
Okay. Yeah, I swear, something in the air. Everyone's having those issues.
Christine, are we ready to proceed?
Yes, we do have Miss Oliver on the call, and I do know Ms.
Mhm.
Brody and is planning to join.
I,
Other than that,
Christine, I'm not able to hear you. I don't know.
no, you can't hear me. Can anybody else hear me?
I can hear you, Christina. And I can
Oh,
hear Tyrone.
Superintendent, you can hear her?
Superintendent, you can hear her?
I can hear her. I can hear you as well.
I can hear you as well.
If there's a YouTube stream, make sure that's on mute if
Oh.
anyone's streaming, because I hear an echo.
Oh, operator error. My apologies. I changed computers and the video was not set up correctly. Audio wasn't set up correctly. Okay. And okay.
Let me know when you're
Okay.
ready.
Yes, I'm ready at this point. All right. Good morning. This is Tyrone Walker, board member of the Board of Ed and chair of the Finance and Audit Committee. And I welcome you to this morning's Audit and Finance Committee meeting. The date is February 13th. We have a fairly full agenda, so I'd want to get proceeded soon. And the first thing up on today's agenda is the contracts that have been vetted through committee.
Yes.
And with Christina, I'm not sure who will be presenting these.
I'll start that off and then hand it over. So as you know, we vetted the contracts through either the Teaching and Learning Committee or the Family and Community Engagement Committee for all the programming. And now they're coming through finance just to speak on the grants and background. We have Chief Black Burke and Chief Davis Googe to talk about the Interdistrict Magnet School Academic and Social Support Extracurricular Program Grant, which are for the contracts vetted through the Teaching and Learning Committee, which were 241 Care, Stay Plugged In. And then we have Chief Black Burke to talk about the Family Resource Center grants, as well as the Extended School Hours grant. And if you board members, you have sent the video and everything, if you have any questions on the programming, please email me. Of course, you can ask them at the board meeting, but we would like to be prepared with an answer. So just let me know if you have any questions after you, if you didn't make the committee, I mean. So I'll turn it over to, let's see who's first. Chief Davis Googe, actually, are you?
Yes, good morning. So I believe everyone is pretty familiar with the 241 Care as well as the Stay Plugged In. I think, Christina, you just wanted me to talk about the funding source, or am I to give an overview? Okay. So the funding source actually comes to us from the Regional School Choice Office through the State Department of Education. This is a part of their commitment to SHEF in terms of ensuring that our schools are remaining attractive and we're able to retain our students. So one way we're doing that is through the extracurricular grant. And there are two. One is the Stay Plugged In, which is, I believe it's like sports with a social emotional learning, without going into too much detail, with a sports with a social emotional learning arm. One of the activities discussed during the sharing of the contract was fencing. And then there's the continuation of esports or expansion at 3 of our schools. So again, the state is committed to providing these funds to our magnet schools to ensure that they remain attractive and able to retain students. Any questions on the funding source?
Well, I'm going to look to see, I can't from this perspective, if there are questions from other board members. So Chief Davis Googe, don't have a question about the funding source or the purpose.
Mhm.
Board Member Brody has a question on this topic. Board Member Brody, please present your question.
Good morning. It's not a question for Chief David Scrooge, maybe for Ms. Santiago so for the renewals, where will there be an opportunity to ask questions on data at the board meeting?
Yes, I mean, board members can always, oh, sorry.
No, will they be prepared with data?
So that's what I,
Yeah.
yes, but I encourage board members to ask ahead of time so that I can let staff be prepared with the answer. So if you let me know, email me, text me what the questions are. If you haven't already, I know some were asked that committee, but if you haven't already, please let me know ahead of time so that we can be prepared to answer at the board meeting, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I believe we're ready to move forward. We're going to discuss this Stay Plugged In next. Are we just going to walk through each one of them?
Those two
Or-
were actually covered
Or
under
those
the,
two are combined? The
Yes.
241 is Stay Plugged In. Okay. The Eli Patrick and Company.
the school improvement grant, is that under, oh, actually, let me see if Dr. Negron is not on the call. Oh, yeah, sorry. Is that, sorry, I might be wrong. Is that Dr. Negron? If not, we'll circle back to that
For
one.
the SIG, yes, school improvement grant.
Yes. Just a quick background, or superintendent, if you have the background on that, feel free to jump in. If not, we'll go to the Family Resource Center and then come back.
So this one was presented already, Christina,
Yes.
and was put on hold.
Oh, yes, sorry. The
There's a
background.
delay. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I have a delay.
Can hear you.
You can
Yes.
hear me. Yeah, so this one was presented at the board meeting last time and was on hold for additional information. And so I just want to make sure that that we're looking at it from a finance and audit perspective with regards to the funds, and then if there are any questions with regard to the programmatic. So I defer to you, Mr. Walker.
Well, let me chime in. 'Cause I think if it was delayed for more information, then I'd say, is that information going to be presented at the board meeting? It might have been presented at committee as well, but is it going to be presented at the board meeting?
Yes and yes. is the
Okay,
answer.
because
We'll talk
at this point, I can't quite recall what the data was, but I do remember there was a tabling, and so, okay.
I do recommend that we review it at the board meeting again, just because, right, it was the initial question that was posed, and so for community and viewers to
Right,
hear.
right, and I'm just going to say for myself, I know the family community engagement committee meeting was moved, and so I'm sitting in to watch that video. So my personal questions are going to wait until I watch that video again, and so that's why I'm not asking a lot of questions at the moment. But if we're going to present this again, then I'm fine with that.
Mr. Walker, can I also suggest that if you do review the video and questions emerge for you, if you can also send them to Christina, send them our way, to the extent that they are dependent on any specific data, so that we have enough time to get them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Thank
I think
you.
that approach is fine. Okay, so if there's not more to say on that, let me see if there's any questions. Okay, there's Phil's asked a question. I think we've touched on this. He asked a reminder of why was it tabled, and
So I can.
but
answer that.
it wasn't tabled for financial audit. I thought it was tabled at the general
The
board
regular
meeting.
Yes.
So
You are
That's why-
correct.
so that's why I need a little refresher on that. But I'm assuming when you present it at the general board meeting, we'll review. Here was the request, here's what we're presenting in response to that request.
Yes. And
But
in
it
fact,
was not from a finance, it was
Right.
not funding related. I just want
Right.
to
Right,
answer.
that's why I'm just I'm just saying it aloud so Phil can hear it. That's all. He's texting. But okay, then that's fine. I think he'll be satisfied with the response at the general board meeting. Can we move forward then to the choir club? Baldwin, this feels like it's an acceptance of funds, so maybe you can describe this. This may be a very easy topic.
yes, and we do have Dr. Negron on the call, and I don't think Ms. Avicoli is back from a conference, but the choir club decided to donate $56,983 to Hartford. So this is just per our policy. Anything that we receive over 50,000 has to be approved by the board, accepted by the board. And I know there was questions at the committee about a detailed list of how the funds will be used, and I'm still waiting on that, but we will have that for the regular meeting. But I do know there was a question of making sure it was equitable for not making sure that the students most in need received whatever it will be, whether it's buying instruments or fixing instruments, making sure that the schools that are most in need received. So that's pretty much it.
If that's the case, I'd prefer to hear from the folks who will be recipient of it. If it's someone involved with music or extracurriculars, I would think they would be the first that would put together what they believe would be a list of needs. I think we can appraise it at that point to say, does it look equitable?
Yes.
I don't want to second guess what they would think is the need. I'm certainly excited to take money that's going to help music in the district. So who would be the person that would at least notionally come up with that list or framework?
It would be our Director of Arts and Music, Tracy Avicoli, who unfortunately had to be away at a conference, so she couldn't attend the meeting, but she knows to come up with the
Right.
answer.
Is it possible to have her available at the board meeting? Because I don't know if that needs to be presented here. I think, from this standpoint, we're just talking about accepting the money, but in terms of its purposes, I'd rather the full board kind of hear that and feel good that, yeah, that seems like a good use of this money. So if she's available, then I think that would be appropriate. And if you want to send it ahead of time, if you
I was
come
just
with the
gonna
list by
say
Friday, just send it so people can at least review it and have a sense of what it is.
that. I was going to say that is the plan, to send it to you ahead of the meeting.
Mhm. Okay, then I think that would be sufficient for that particular line item.
Okay.
Okay, so do you want to go
Yeah,
through those as well before you make a final determination?
Real quick, we have Chief Blackburk on the call for the Family Resource Center grants and also the Extended School Hours Grant, to just go a quick voiceover of the background of that.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And I will apologize for my voice in advance. I'm getting over a little cold. So the Family Resource Center grants, this is an acceptance of fund and also a contract approval continuation. This is a grant that we receive through the State Department of Education each year to continue operating the 5 family resource centers that we have in the district. This year, the dollars will be split between the Village for Families and Children and the Hispanic Health Council. Hispanic Health Council, they do run their FRC through Maria Sanchez School, and the Village through Burns Latino Studies, Sarah J. Rawson, Sand, and Fred D. Wish. This contract term before us, we received information that the funds would be coming to us in late December, but it does cover an entire fiscal year, 7/1 through 6/30. But the timing of the grant is always mid-year. That's just how the State Department of Education releases those funds. And the funding source is the State Department of Education. During the Family Engagement and Committee meeting, we did share background information and data, so I'd welcome board members to just please review that. I know the time has changed, but that information is there, and of course, we would welcome any questions as it relates to the FRCs and the work that they're doing. But just quickly, the Hispanic Health Council, they were able to serve 641 families through their FRC last year. And the Village for Families and Children across their 4 sites, they were able to serve 7,200 families. And Christina, let me know if there's any other background that I need to provide.
No, but I'm sorry, you did message me I'd rather correct the amount now. Did I put it wrong? I thought it was 100,000 per FRC site.
Hold on, let me turn back here.
Sorry, let me go back to the other. I just want to make sure I have the amount correct. For the Family Resource Center, I think it was approximately 100.
It's approximately 100, so I can get the exact dollar amount.
So that's why I split it 4 and then 1
Okay.
school. Okay. I just want to make sure we have it correct here before we move.
Thank you.
Chief Blackburk, were you complete with your?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I had one question because I think I did hear the 7,200 family number. Was that the Hispanic Health Council who served 7,200 families?
The Village for Families and Children across their 4 sites served 7,200 families.
Okay, the only thing I guess I'm trying to be clear on was that accomplished with just our $400,000? Is that what we're saying, or is that, am I misunderstanding? We served 7,000 families with $400,000.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. The dollars for the FRCs that is received through the State Department of Education, yes, those dollars do go towards all 4 FRCs, but yes, you are spot on. That money is braided together with other funding sources to lift the work in the FRCs. Much of the community work that is done, grant dollars are granted, but other dollars must be stored in order to lift those programs. But I think it's an excellent question. So no, the 100,000 for each FRC is not how they all came to the 7,200 families.
Oh, okay. I'm just saying that, so maybe we'll talk offline to kind of gather that, because I just want to make sure when we talk at both committee or the meeting, the broader meeting, that there's some realism placed there, because initially I heard the numbers like, what? So now that I understand, you're saying our money is pooled with other monies. And so in total, you're saying between all the funding, 7,200 families were served, of which our money contributed to that overall service.
From the community-based, sorry, Chief Blackburk, from the community-based organization that we're talking about.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Okay, but not just us, okay.
And
Go ahead.
And if I just may add again, these are dollars that come to us through the State Department of Education. So these aren't dollars that were curated by HPS. We do have to complete a grant, all of that, but these are dollars that come directly from the State Department of Education to the school district to implement our FRCs.
Okay, and thank you. So that's the other question I was going to ask too, that these are dedicated dollars. These are not dollars we can use for other purposes. They're really dedicated for this purpose.
Correct.
Okay. I think Board Member Escobar has a question, and so I would yield the floor to her, followed by Board Member Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Chief Blackburk said. These are state funds given to HPS for the FRCs. We went over this during our FCE, and I just want to reiterate, if anyone from the FCE committee has not, I was the only one unfortunately there, so I tried my best. But I urged,
You just went on mute.
apologies, I was getting a call, my fellow committee members to view the video and to please follow up with any additional questions about the FRCs and anything else. So I urge you to please reach out to Christina with any of those questions, and Ms. Shett will follow up. I know this is not finance related, but I just wanted to reiterate that it was seen in the FCE committee first. And my recommendation was to then pass it on to finance committee based on the information that I received from Chief Blackburg and her team and the CBOs that were there.
Yeah, and thank you, Board Member Escobedo. I had acknowledged myself that, yeah, I was going to watch the video this week, and would share your encouragement that we watch it, just so we understand what the numbers mean and whatnot. Board Member Oliver.
Yes, good morning. This should be quick. I just wanted to, as we're reinforcing that these dollars come through the state, that these dollars are likely acting as seed dollars for the matching funds by the community-based organizations. And I just wanted to confirm that understanding.
Again, thank you, Board Member Oliver, because because I think it's important that people understand, because if you just hear the numbers side by side, it would seem like, how's that all happening? So I think it's really important to understand what you just expressed. So I'm glad you shared that, as well as Chief Blackburg, I think, as well. Board Member Brody.
Thank you. So in the reporting, I'm just, because we always say what we will do. I don't want to, so I'm looking for what we did do, like what they did versus what they will. And I've seen the actual report is a lot of wills, and I don't see like data of what was done. So that's what I'll be looking to hear at the board meeting.
Thank you, Board Member Brody. And so, Christina, if you can capture that feels like a data request, so I think,
Yeah.
So Christina, let's capture that. If we can figure out what was done over the past year through the program, which we understand now, our funds were just a portion of the overall effort, as it were. But
and I do believe it was discussed in the committee. So again, if Ms. Brody and Mr. Walker, if you review the video, and if you still have it still hasn't been answered, please. But yes, I will make sure that,
okay.
You know, Ms. Brody always asks that, making sure that it's what they've done. But
Okay.
we've been intentional on doing that in committee as well, to make sure that that's captured. And I
Okay.
just want to point out that there is a superintendent. I also had the same question. Ms. Oliver, was it a question you were asking, or were you seeking confirmation on?
It sounded to me that it was confirmation seeking, but I just didn't want to.
Yes, that's correct. It was confirmation to get my point of clarification. And the only reason I'm asking, just to be clear to everyone, is it's good to pool dollars, and it's always a positive thing, but I think it's important to recognize when it's basically an expectation in a lot of dollars, especially public dollars, that you have to raise other funds in order to actually meet the deliverables, and wanted to understand if that was the case. I believe that's the case, but just wanted that clarification.
Yeah. Again, thank you. And I think Ms. Board Member Brody has a comment here. Christina, maybe to clarify what her question was. Board Member Brody.
Yes. So I'm a promise. I can't promise that I'll get to the video, but I'll look through the data.
Okay.
And
Okay.
maybe I'll talk to Ms. Santiago offline, because I don't know if I have to go to one document and the other and compare it, but I don't see anything that what I'm looking for, but I'll talk to you to make sure you I'm not sending you on a wild data collection, but I'll be specific to her because I can't say I'll watch because I don't want to hear it on video. I want to see it on paper. I guess that's the more of what I'm saying.
Right. And I appreciate what Board Member Brody is saying. I'm going to watch the video. I'll withhold questions to there because I realize sometimes the presentation doesn't tell the whole story. So, okay. So either way, Board Member Brody, if you can get the questions back to Christina this week, so there's some time to gather the data. Yeah, that's the only thing is I get the point here. We'd rather not have people surprised by a request on Monday or next Tuesday, as it were. So, all right. I think we've kind of killed that issue. Now we talked about did that last comment cover all four of those? I just want to be clear that basically we were talking about all four of those CSDE grant funds. So all those were really bundled together. And I guess I would say one thing. Is there a way to figure out, how much matching took place? Like, is there a way to understand? I know that's our portion. Was overall money granted like double this or triple this or something like that? Is there a way to kind of get a flavor what went into serving the 7,000 families?
You mean from the CBO's budget perspective?
Yeah, I think sometimes what I'm trying to get at is I don't want to get the feedback that somehow people are cooking numbers where it's like, OMG, the district, we're spending $400,000 and we're serving 7,000 families. How do we do that for only $400,000? I think people, if they could understand that, no, this is part of $2 million, of which ours was a portion, and of the total money, it served X number of families. So people understand that in terms of coming with the results, they're not slicing results up by how much was contributed. The results were the results of the total effort that was, conducted and done. Do you, or at least say that to people so they get it? That's all I'm saying. So I just want to make sure that it's at least expressed and said, so folks understand it. That's all.
Chief Blackburg, we can connect with the CBO so that they can have some verbal explanation.
Absolutely. And the CBOs were present during our FCE committee meeting and their monthly reports. So getting to dollars per school, getting to number of families per school is something that I think is readily done. The purpose of me stating the 7,000 is, again, it's across 4 schools. So 4 schools that they are serving. We're a district of 16,000 families. So just for relative purposes. And then the other piece that I would add is that the extended school hours grant, that is something, because we are a priority district, we do receive dollars. There has to be a public process for those funds. And so as you stated, again, it's acceptance of funds. Those dollars come to the district, they are contracted out. And the 2 contracts that are above the threshold are before you here. And again, that information is available via the report from the FCE committee as well as the video.
Okay, thank you so much. And I appreciate the response. I'm just anticipating what kind of feedback I'm going to get. So, so at any rate, let's move forward. I think, again, I've said enough on that point. Is the caring nurses the next topic up, and who will be presenting that?
We have Deb Comides on the line, and I will let her introduce herself, and I will share the PowerPoint. Ms. Comides, hold on.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Deb Comides, Director of Nursing and Clinical Services. This is, I'll just wait for the slide. Thank you. This is an extension of a contract with the Caring Nurses Staff Agency to be able to continue to safely staff schools on a daily basis with nurses when our own substitute nurses are not available. Most often we can cover the schools with our own pool, but our substitute nurses also work for other per diem jobs and are not always available. This additional resource will provide a safety net so that we can be sure we can provide those essential nursing services to students on a daily basis. And I would be happy to answer any questions.
I think it's important.
The questions among board members I'm checking out. Nurse what Calmaides, just a general background question. So Caring Nurses provide what temporary nursing assignments at the school level where there isn't a permanent nurse. Is that the understanding of?
So yeah, thank you. It's a combination. They would provide substitute nurses on a daily basis. We do still have 3 school nurse vacancies. So it's a combination of either a long-term assignment or a substitute nurse assignment on a daily basis.
Okay, so then this would be an adjunct to like the staff of permanent nurses that we already have within the district.
Yes, exactly. And again, this is a safety net. I do always go to our own substitute nurse pool, and only when I've exhausted all of those options would I then turn to the agency.
Okay, I understand. Board Member Brody?
Yes, I don't know if this is for talent management on what efforts we're doing to hire nurses. So that is what I'll be asking for sure.
Okay.
Thank you. I know that the Office of Talent Management has expanded their search for nurses. The interviewing and hiring process for nurses, I can speak to that, goes on year round, because the nature of the substitute nursing pool is that we hire nurses, they work for us for a while, and then they tend to get other jobs, so people come and go. But that those recruitment efforts and that interviewing and hiring process does sort of go on throughout the course of the school year.
Yeah, just what you said, talent management handles, that's just what I'm looking for. That specific data on their efforts of what they have been doing, where they've been recruiting from, just their efforts. So that would probably be for them to answer.
Thank you. Yes, I can't speak specifically to that point.
Okay. Board Member Oliver?
Thank you. To that, perhaps it'll also be helpful to just hear the market reality in terms of the labor shortage as it relates to nurses. And I just think that might be something that'll be helpful to help ground the conversation.
That will be part of the context.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And I can just add that we did start out this summer with 10 school nurse vacancies, and we are down to 3. So we're making progress, but there's definitely, we are feeling the nursing shortage in the district.
Okay. If there aren't other questions, is there an action here that needs to be done, Christina?
Yes, this will be on the regular meeting agenda for a contract amendment. As you said, they have been using it, it's been under 50, but now the amount will be over 50. And they're seeking for, Ms. Knight is 100,000, right? To make sure it's covered for the rest of the year.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, so this is because the threshold has been reached. So
Right.
are the board members in attendance agreeable with moving this forward to the full board?
Yes.
I am.
Seeing yes, a yes, board member Brody or board Chairman Rigor. Seeing no objections, I would concur that the agreement is to move this to the full board, and we will then review and discuss and approve at that point. Okay. Give me 1 second here. I'm checking my agenda. So just want to be clear that we're done with the potential contract issues, because I see what we have coming up next is continued discussion of the budget. So I just want to make sure that all the contract related issues have been discussed and vetted, and we're good to move forward. Yes. And are we able to release the folks? Oh, wait a minute, Board Member Brody has a question.
No, it's not to really, not that they can't go off. Mine's isn't to them directly. It's on the vetting. You're saying vetting. Sometimes in some committees, I don't feel we're vetting. Like
okay.
in years past, is like, are we okay to move? I don't get that. I get it as a presentation. I don't get like it could get held up here because we're still, we have questions. So I know you're saying vetting, but I don't know if we're consistent in all our committees in that way.
I hear that. I think that's a relevant point to discuss. The board as a whole, in terms of how, if there's a consistent criteria to elevate from committee to committee. So I would note that. That being said, today, I'm wanting to move forward with issue 2. And so I think now that we've allowed the folks who are doing the contract extensions to be released from the meeting, and it appears that's the case. So let's move forward with the discussion of the 23-24 budget. Chief Penn, are you leading that discussion?
Good morning, I am.
Okay.
This will be a relatively brief update. It is mostly centered on the additional details we were asked for regarding our ESSER spending. So I'm going to share my screen real quickly and put up a presentation that if it hasn't already gone out to the board, it will shortly. I sent the final over to Christina this morning. Let me kind of get into the detail here though. So as I said, we had 2 fairly distinctive requests regarding our ESSER spending coming out of the last time that we discussed this. And so I wanted to be able to give you that detail. And I think the framing is important in terms of how we arrived at a lot of this spending plan. Because when we were developing our COVID grant spending plan in 2021, and that's the time frame that it happened, it was the fall of 2021 when the initial plans all came together. We had identified 4 pretty distinctive strategic priorities that became what we called internally our must-wins. You can see them here, the expanded learning time, the support for teachers in schools, the additional connection and to students, and expanded wellness, and then a sustainable teacher pipeline. And those are the big 4 categories that were our must-wins. And then layered onto that became sort of the agency that we created for each of the school leaders. And what was first the equity innovation grants, and then the scaled or SEIG innovation grants. plus some other things in terms of PPE and school safety and technology that were all layered in. But this is the spending has been evolving since 2021 when the initial plan was put together. And as I put this presentation together, I was trying to play off two different things. One was, what's the right level of detail to share versus becoming overwhelming? As it was correctly pointed out, when we filed the application with the state, it was like 45 pages of detail. And I don't think that's wieldy for a conversation to look at this. But here's where I kind of landed in terms of trying to thread that needle. At the end of January, we had just under $95 million worth of additional funds in our COVID grants. And what I've shown here is a little under 81 million. Now, on the left-hand side are all the different items that link up directly to a particular priority. And you can see I've ranked them within priority 1, priority 2, 3, and 4 that tie back to that prior page. And I'm not going to go through all these. This is all the very discrete items, though, that line up under each individual priority. On the right-hand side, contrarily, are the things that touch multiple priorities or the things that did not get assigned a priority because it's something that really just doesn't fit within a priority. As an example, student safety and PPE and things along those lines and the HVAC upgrades didn't come in through a priority linkage. But what we did have come in, in addition to that, was all of our tech upgrades. We knew we were going to do them, but they weren't directly part of our priority. So now, as I said, we're showing about $81 million worth of detail on this page here in terms of what the planned spend was. And that leaves between the 95 and the 81, about $14 million left. About half of that comes down to two different items. One is the $5.2 million worth of vacancies that we talked about in our last meeting. And then there's another $2 million that comes from our initial estimate of what it was going to cost for the new ELA curriculum is $2 million less than we had originally planned. So if you see on the left-hand side about the 8th item down, we have the new ELA curriculum for $4.4 million. The original estimate on that was $6.4 million. So we know we have $2 million sort of back in the well, so to speak, in terms of that. So the first question then may be, well, okay, if you've got 14.4 and you're telling me 7.2 is in these other two buckets, where's the other 7? That's scattered across a very large number of items. And that's where we come back to the question around, is it worth putting up all that level of detail in a way that's going to add to the conversation? We could do it. But it's multiple pages worth of stuff that, could be $8,000 items and $9,000 items. And I'm not sure it's cogent to a discussion of how much is really left over for us to spend. But there's always been a spending plan around the entire value of the grant. That's not something that came up new. So then the second part of the question is on the next page. There was a question around, if you looked at the 9.2 million that we sort of identified as the opportunity to use for deficit mitigation, we've already said, we're thinking about the ELA is $2 million less. My conversations with Dr. Curtis have been around eliminate the 23-24 retention bonus for $2 million. And then there was a specific question around, well, if you looked at all the vacancies for the 5.2 million, how does that break down? Priority 1, 2, and 3 are shown there, and they make up the bulk of that 5.2, 4.8 million of it. And then the last 0.4 are other positions that we added along the way. Things like behavior techs and things like student engagement specialists and things of that nature, where positions had gotten added that we didn't necessarily fill all of them, but they weren't originally coded to one of the priorities. And that's a small piece. That's about $400,000 worth. But that's how that $5.2 million worth of vacancies break down. And I'd be remiss if I didn't come back to this at least one more time, right? And just in terms of thinking about this, as we think about the spending throughout the remainder of between now and September 2024, we're still going to be held to the original priorities, the grants that were set by the federal government and by the state in terms of addressing the post-pandemic needs of the students. And this is real, that we will create a cliff in 24-25. In other words, out of the 9.2 million that we're planning on using here, some of these expenses that we're going to push into that 9.2 will then need to find a new home for 24-25, and that concerns me. Because that's going to be on top of whatever the normalized level of cost inflation is that we have in that year. So it's not unrealistic to anticipate that we're probably looking at a $24 or $25 million cliff that we're going to have to cover for a deficit in 24-25, all other things being equal. And at that point, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Chief Penn. Board Member Brody has a question.
Thanks. So not seeing this until this moment. So I didn't see a something on board docs. At least I looked there. So it, I can't ask questions because this is new as of today. So I guess I'll have questions coming up, but to me, it seems, so as board members, I feel that give me the data. I understand that's what superintendent, her staff, they're hired to come up with best use of money, implementing all of that. I feel my job as a board member is to get the data and say, do I agree with that? Like that's my role. So I need the data to be able to do that, to say, this is my opinion. And I know we are, at least from the 5 surrounding towns that I looked at, we're anticipating even being ahead of them in this process. But what they had and what I asked early on is, one school district they just have the meetings already scheduled, and it's if in the title is if needed. So we're like sending all of our questions to Ms. Santiago, and it's like it's so I don't want to say unstructured because that sounds like an insult, but it's set up in a way that I can't stay on like top of. Someone ask a question. If I look at their question or a part of that discussion, I don't have that question anymore, because we've had these meetings, and there is something about sending questions offline versus talking as board members, getting understanding. It's something about that I think will be valuable in this process. But this information had been, if it was, out there, then it would be like meaningful discussions when we are meeting. So that's where I'm like, it's just not working for me. I'm sorry, but I'll through this and pose my questions.
Thank you, Board Member Brody.
Now end with, because
Board Member Brody, go ahead.
Today I'm hearing we, like when it's decided that you're changing what you're giving, then we should know that that's not to expect that. Like, so, because today you think you would have expected. So it's just like, do you really want to give us the data? And I'm assuming you do, but I'm not feeling you do. Like I feel like I'm just not getting what I need to process, especially specific to these ESSER funds in particular. But I'll end there, Mr. Chair. I don't want to belabor my point.
Yes, Superintendent, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to also remind everyone that we have been very explicit with regard to allowing time from now until whenever the board it is decides on the date to vote on the budget, that, right, it is an ongoing process. So I wanted to also make that very explicit, that we have been trying to share information as it becomes available. And so should there be a need to engage in further conversation, we certainly are available to do that.
Thank you, Superintendent. Chief Penn, I would, I have I guess a question or comment. I guess I'll start with the comment. What you presented today is beneficial, and I would encourage more sharing of information in this detail. I realize what you were saying is, in doing this, there's lots of information to share, and you're trying to figure out how much and at what level. What you presented today was at the right level to at least be informative, and I would encourage sharing more information like that. That being said, my question is, I'm taking from what you presented that we've been throwing around the $95 million number, and it appears that 80 million and some change are essentially spoken for, or you're saying that it's obligated or encumbered, and you're anticipating that there's in essence less than $15 million of that money that's discretionary. Is that kind of my main takeaway from your?
I don't know that I would even describe it as discretionary. I mean, it's the whole 95 million has been planned.
Okay.
Now out of that 95 million, you've seen the 81 shared here, plus 5 million of vacancies, plus another 2 million that was the excess of the ELA curriculum upgrade. So I'm not saying the remaining 7's not planned. It is planned. The question is, it's like at what level of detail do I show the remaining 7 that it still leaves a worthwhile conversation?
Okay, and now I see what you're saying. And so, okay, that's what you're communicating. I posed a question I did because one of the comments from the early discussion that was coming up from Board Member Brody, maybe even others, was this idea of how much ESSER funding could be used for kind of deficit remediation, what's prudent what's even prudent to talk about in that realm, right? And so so when I use the word discretionary, that's really what I was pointing at is I realize most ESSER funding is dedicated money to a certain degree because it's there for education recovery. So I realize that it's there for a purpose and not just free flowing money. So that being said, I guess I'll ask for your opinion on this one. What's prudent in terms of monies that could be used for, deficit remediation versus other purposes for ESSER funds?
So since you framed the question the way that you did, I would not consider going past the 9.2. That's my recommendation.
Okay. All right.
That's 6%, Chief Penn.
Yeah, it's 6% of the value of the grant that we were awarded. Technically,
Okay.
3.
All right. I just want to hear something, whether you agree or disagree, that there has to be some starting point. And I get you. So you're saying 6% or somewhere in that smaller percentage level is what would be considered prudent. Board Member Brody, if you have a question.
Yeah, one, proactively, we know we always have a deficit. So proactively, what do we do and have in place? That's why I asked for the list of the grants that we go after and seeking this funding, because we know we're going to have a deficit. So instead of arriving here every year, what are we going to cut? What are we going to, it showed some, efforts, some grants that we went after, but is there are we are those the only grant, if those are the only grants we've sought after or only funding, or like, I'm like, what's the plan? Because sitting and waiting and knowing the deficit is coming and not having a plan around not having that happen, and even being creative with the ESSER funds early on, like when we did receive them, you still knew, you know, we were having a deficit coming up because we have one every single year. But I do want to also emphasize that if the process, at least for me as a board member, is like, okay, it's forever changing, but not structured in a way that I'm comfortable with. But we have some people in the community that are following along, and for them, it has to really be, because we have privy to Ms. Santiago and asking our questions and trying to get answers for us. But for a public that we say as a board, we're transparent. How are we even considering that lens of how they're trying to follow along and have a understanding when some board members don't have an understanding or is trying to get data, process data? So the public part also needs to be raised. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Brody. If I can add to that, I would recognize that there is a community meeting around the budget. So I don't know if that was a new insertion, but I appreciate that, because it does get at this comment that's been made a couple times. It does also appear that we're moving the final approval of the budget to March, which I think at least answers the call to provide some chance for the community to see kind of the finalized product and get some time to digest it. I'm just gonna kind of elevate the point that I think while the things are in process, often people can lose track or not pay as much attention. But when something's more finalized, it's easier to kind of put it in front of people and have them really look at, here's the real plan, and people can really digest it and react to it. And so I'm just appreciating that we're doing a community event, and if there are ways that we can do a little more of that, either as board members or as the overall district, I would elevate that to try to address Ms. Brody's point of giving people as much chance as possible. If it's possible to get this finalized, sent out, I don't know, is it on the parent portal, or is there a way where parents can kind of get to it? I don't know if that's something, the kind of thing that goes on parent portal. I'm not but yes, Superintendent, you're saying that's available at the parent portal?
We have shared and we will continue to share throughout all of our mediums.
Okay.
Mr. Walker, can I just clarify with regard to grant? Well, I guess if I can step back and just, Hartford Public Schools, like some other urban districts, right? We have structural financial challenges, structurals that have been at play to, as Ms. Brody is saying, right, for years, that going after grants, right, is not going to solve, right, because they are so intertwined to the enrollment piece, the special education tuition piece, the chef context that is very unique. That is one thing that is unique to Hartford. And so we look for grants. We would need, I don't know that there are districts that get $24 million worth of grants from private foundations, right? And grants also sunset. And so, we did have conversations, and we were looking to establish a foundation, right? That would potentially be another source of revenue. That didn't work out. But I wanted to just reference that while we are being mindful of the opportunities around grants. I haven't identified one, and I am looking across the entire national landscape that, you know, allows for a $25 million, right, award. So I want to acknowledge that it is important for us to continue to solve for the future, and that it is a structural challenge that is dependent on many, many factors that grant funding just in totality will not address. And I see a question around legislative, and we're going to continue to advocate legislatively. I mean, the House bill that is up that was not at the moment, right, was not part of the governor's proposed budget, is one that we're going to continue to go after.
Thank you, Superintendent. I do believe both the district and the school board needs to join with our partners and elevate to the state the need to reevaluate the funding formula. And I realize there's several proposals out there. I don't know if there's a chance this year that the governor will be moved in some way, but but we need to keep trying. What I would share is the need to continue to involve community partners and stakeholders on the process. The reason I haven't been raising the flag just as a board member around all the ESSER funding spending is that there has been kind of a seemingly there's seemingly been a kind of best practice sharing that warns school districts about using too much of these ARP or ESSER funds for deficit reduction, because you don't want to somehow use non-recurring funds to solve a deficit problem that will then reemerge the minute those funds run out. So I don't see ESSER as being the big solution. So I do think we could use it. So the discussion is worthwhile, but I did want to share that there does seem to be best practice sharing that says don't use ESSER for too much of that. So I appreciate Chief Penn's point of the 6% threshold or something that's fairly modest. And there was a comment mentioned here. Excuse me, just a minute. I think there was open choice districts. So you can read the chat to see there's additional comment about open choice. These are things that I believe should be discussed. I don't know if we can discuss them here in this meeting, but again, that's why I brought up the budget planning process. Maybe we should continue to look at that. I have questions too about open choice at magnet schools and how the future will look in year 24, 25 and moving forward, whether we would have a different strategy around open choice, a different strategy around magnet schools and our footprint there. And yes, he's agreeing another meeting. And so I would just say we can lift it up here in this forum, but acknowledge that I think another type of meeting or the discussion of board of the whole discuss the budget planning strategy moving forward. Because I think we've had a couple of years of being in tall grass because of ESSER and ARP funds. Probably in the years moving forward, we'll go back to the norm of hand wringing and having to make tough decisions every year. And maybe having a discussion about how that should move forward in a better way would be great. Now, what's left on the agenda right now with the proposed budget is just a discussion. So there's no real action here. I don't see further questions. And I appreciate what you shared. And I think it at least seemed to answer what I thought was being asked. There's updates and reports. I don't know, Chief Penn, if there's anything particular you want to highlight out of the December spending that we don't already know, or if they're just provided for our review, and that's kind of the intent.
Well, yeah, it's our standard monthly reporting. I guess the thing that I would most call attention to, and I would encourage folks to read it, is we're forecasting a lower deficit than we had in the prior month, mostly as a combination of two different things. Number one, the amount of money that we can bill to other districts for the special education services that we provide to their students. But then the new grant that we became aware of, this I call it the tuition offset grant. I'm not sure that's the proper name. Where if you're a member of the Chef region, and you have more than 4% of your residents attending schools that charge tuition, so in our case, that's Correct and Learn, there's $11 million out there to be prorated to the participating districts that would qualify. We don't know the exact amount of the grant for us. We just acknowledge that we're the sort of the big dog in the space. So we think we've been somewhat conservative in saying that we think we can see $3 million of the 11 come to us through that grant. But as I understand it, the state is fairly close on coming out with a final number once they finalize the PSIS data on their end. And once that comes out, it'll have implications for both this year and years going forward, as the legislation that created it reads that it's initially in 2023, but then ongoing every year thereafter.
Okay, thank you, Chief Penn. My only reaction is that I hope the state raises that pot at the same rate that Correct is raising that tuition. So there's somehow some reality that we're gonna have some increased costs in that. So I hope that number isn't fixed.
Yeah. As it stands right now, yes, but we, hopefully you're right that they do index it some way to the growth and cost as well.
Okay, thank you. We're done with the agenda. If there aren't other topics for discussion, I'm going to propose that we adjourn the day's meeting. Let's give ourselves back maybe 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes of time. Is there a general agreement on the adjournment? I would say so. Then thank you for all those who are listening in on the discussion. Hopefully that today's discussion was luminary and provided some information that needed to be shared that you didn't know before. And with that, I thank you for listening, and for those participating in today's meeting.